Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Day 2 of CTIA's Everything Policy Program. To kick off the afternoon, I am happy to welcome a prominent advocate for expanding access to secure and reliable wireless networks. That's FCC Commissioner Nathan Simington. He has served as an FCC Commissioner since 2020, and before that was a senior advisor at NTIA. In each of these roles, Commissioner Simington has been thoughtful in highlighting that wireless deployment is an economic and national security imperative. As the Commissioner said in his speech almost a year ago, rural areas need access to high-speed networks today, not years from now. Access to broadband will help keep rural areas competitive in today's economy. And wireless networks are an essential tool to provide that connectivity. Now, to expand wireless networks, we need access to spectrum that is allocated for commercial use. Commissioner Simington has been a proponent for restoring the FCC's Spectrum Auction Authority so that we can do just that. And he's highlighted that mid-band spectrum is especially important for 5G. As he's noted, for the U.S. to retain its competitive edge against China, it must ensure adequate spectrum for the wireless networks that form the backbone of new technologies. Commissioner Simington is also a valued partner in securing our networks and devices. He understands that in the dynamic wireless industry, securing our networks requires constant vigilance and regulatory flexibility to adapt to rapid innovation and new cybersecurity practices. With that, please join me in giving him a warm round of applause. Thank you, Commissioner Simington.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to speak with you today to discuss a very important topic, global spectrum harmonization. The United States is at a critical juncture for regaining leadership in driving future international spectrum allocation decisions. The U.S. is in serious risk right now of marooning itself and becoming a mid-band spectrum and technology island, considering that U.S. allocations in the 3 and 6 gigahertz bands increasingly diverge from the harmonization in the rest of the world. To stave off such an outcome, the United States must drive consensus with global industry ecosystem partners and government allies to ensure that emerging technologies and services, such as supplemental coverage from space or direct-to-cell, do not cause or suffer from harmful interference internationally. Global consensus will also ensure that other nascent and future technologies are deployed in a harmonized manner that preserves economic scale and synergies to the benefit of industry and consumers in all countries. The United States, unfortunately, faces unique challenges in managing its 5G mid-band spectrum for both incumbent federal uses and non-federal uses. The FCC also still lacks spectrum auction authority, sadly, for nearly 2 years at this point. This has delayed decision-making for the allocation of new commercial spectrum bands for 5G, 6G, and beyond, and of course also delayed equipment development. The biggest threat to U.S. leadership, and one that's carefully exploiting America's dithering approach to spectrum policy, is the People's Republic of China. China has, by contrast, streamlined its spectrum management and aggressively initiated diplomatic efforts supporting its spectrum harmonization goals by investing significant amounts of political and financial capital into the 5G industry in support of raising its profile on the international stage. As I've pointed out many times before in front of many different audiences, this is because 5G plays such a critical role in the Chinese manufacturing and industrial economy, with significant 5G deployments and investment in sectors such as mining or manufacturing. I'm sure that most of the people in this crowd know this, but federal users occupy 61% of the 3 to 8.4 gigahertz bands, the prime mid-band segment for various services, including space research, government satellite, aeronautical and experimental, and And I would note that asking questions about spectral efficiency will begin to highlight precisely how wide the gap is between the practices typical in the wireless mobility industry and those in some of these other sectors that I've just named. Despite the fact that Congress, the FCC, and NTIA recognize the growing importance of mid-band spectrum for commercial 5G build-out, not to mention 6G, no additional commercial allocations have happened, nor have they been planned, thus depriving the industry of vital lead time to design equipment and plan investments. This is all despite the many concerns that you in industry have raised about the risks that the United States could soon be operating all on its own, with no ability to influence or drive synergies and equipment scale in other markets. In addition to the heavy federal use of mid-band spectrum, which prevents deployment of 5G and other commercial technologies at scale, the United States also risks losing spectrum harmonization with its longtime partners in the Americas, especially in the 6 gigahertz band. For example, Brazil, which earmarked the 6 gigahertz band for unlicensed use, is now reconsidering that decision and may allow unlicensed use only in the bottom half of the band, thus freeing up the top half for future mobile IMT systems. Brazil's reconsideration may or may not have to do with China's or the EU's decisions to deploy 5G in portions of the 6 gigahertz band, but it nonetheless threatens the global ecosystems for both Wi-Fi and 5G technologies to the United States' to the America's detriment should more countries follow suit. A recent report I read on 5G from the Atlantic Council really hits the mark on several points. It states that although China currently stands alone in licensing 6 gigahertz for 5G development, should other countries follow, it could shift the global 5G landscape and potentially put the United States at a severe disadvantage. At Work 2023, China reportedly conducted several bilateral engagements and campaigned to gain global support for spectrum harmonization in the 6 gigahertz band. With China's pull and Europe's proposal to deploy 5G in the upper 6 gigahertz band, countries representing over 60% of the global population are now in support of 5G in 6 gigahertz. The report specifically states, and I'm quoting here, global harmonization of 6 gigahertz without U.S. participation could further lower equipment costs for Chinese telecom firms while raising the cost of the competing equipment from trusted vendors, doubling the damage, end quote. This is more than just an unfortunate possibility. And now we have to take decisive action to shore up America's competitive leadership. The first and biggest imperative we have is reauthorizing the FCC's auction authority. I implore Congress to take action soon. Upon reinstating the FCC's auction authority, Congress must also immediately identify and reallocate additional spectrum for exclusive commercial use. I've long emphasized that in order for 5G to reach its potential in the United States, it must be deployed to serve the critical infrastructure and manufacturing sectors. This is where I believe it needs to take hold in order for the United States to remain competitive with and secure from China. After all, if China is developing these technologies in 5G and is pushing them in 5G, and as those of you who were at MWC in Barcelona may have seen with your own eyes, if those technologies are coming online primarily from China, that's a significant push from everyone else to get in line with China's technology proposals in other areas. So in order for us to fix this, we need to have plentiful exclusive use spectrum for both security and capacity reasons to serve the industrial and critical infrastructure sectors. I'm going to continue preaching to the choir a little bit. I also agree with two of CTIA's key policy assessments in the FCC's Spectrum Implementation Plan involving a unique opportunity for the United States to focus on the 7 and 8 gigahertz bands for 5G. First, I agree that there is evidence that much of the 7 and 8 gigahertz bands are underutilized by federal operators, making it suitable for reallocation. Again, if the Commission were to start asking questions about spectral efficiency in the use of bands, this would, I think, be highlighted. Second, while America is moving forward with unlicensed operations in the 6 gigahertz band, it does still have an opportunity with the 7 and 8 gigahertz bands to leverage the globally harmonized range that includes the upper 6, which would be made available for exclusive use IMT services in numerous markets globally. By making licensed opportunities available in the spectrum immediately adjacent to other globally allocated licensed IMT bands, the United States will enable the 7 and 8 gigahertz bands to be more easily harmonized. This will benefit consumers through economies of scale in infrastructure, devices, and chipsets. So, to close, I'm going to parrot and applaud the extremely common sense conclusion made in the Atlantic Council report I mentioned earlier. It's the standards, stupid. In all seriousness, the report aptly notices that the international community needs a coordinated approach to investigate the impact of China's direct subsidies to Huawei and export financing in the global 5G market. The concerns aren't just about the market for 5G. China's anti-competitive flair extends beyond 5G to electric vehicles, social media, and beyond. And this isn't even to mention China's espionage goals tied up in these endeavors, whether state or industrial. As the report urges, the United States and its allies must promote strong governance principles at standard-setting bodies like 3GPP and at government-based organizations such as the ITU. These principles must be based on openness, transparency, and consensus. It will take a concerted global effort to police the bad actors in global technology competition and to ferret out unfair policies and practices. We have our work cut out for us, but we can't shrink from the challenge. So thank you for inviting me to speak today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.